Explain the concept of implied contracts. So, an implied contract is a legally enforceable promise created by actions rather than words. It's also called promissory apostle or reliance. And for example, if I ask the CPA for advice and they end up giving it to me, then it's implied that I'll pay their usual rate, even without like a formal agreement on that specific part. And courts recognize these contracts when someone reasonably relies on a promise and acts on it, just like in the Layden v. URAC case where employees' manuals created an implied obligation. So question 2, how is prior consideration viewed when determining if a contract is enforceable? So the bottom line is prior consideration is not valid. A promise based on something already given or done in the past isn't enforceable because it wasn't bargained for at the time of the new agreement. So, for example, if a board gives a VP a bonus for last year's work, that's not a valid contract. And consideration must be current and mutual for a contract to hold up in court. So if it's something from last year, you cannot use that for this year. It has to be about this year and relevant to the information at hand. So question 3, USS Commander receives emoji response. Is this a valid agreement? So we're kind of moving towards the times where everyone's using emojis for everything and every single message. I fall victim to that. And in the case of a USS Commander, no, it's not a valid agreement. So for a contract or military order to be enforceable, it needs clear, unambiguous communication, especially, when lives are at stake. And emojis like a fist, like a thumbs up, a flag, a fire emoji, these don't particularly meet the legal standard for acceptance of an offer. So according to contract law, the terms must be definite and understandable. And these responses with whatever emoji is given failed both of those options I just listed. And then, the commander should not act on it. They should, be like, yo, I can't do this. Like, you got to give me an actual written or video response. And because these emojis are not clear and they will not be valid. When does a party breach a contract? So, it's pretty simple. A breach occurs when a party fails to perform a promise under a valid contract. Where it gets a little less simple is there are different levels. So you got complete performance, which fulfills the deal. You got substantial performance, which it triggers like limited obligations, and material breach, where it lets the other party stop performance and then end up suing. So courts often look at whether a condition was met, like in St. Louis procedure versus Hughes, where failing to return a laptop voided the contract. And, the court looked at this and they said it was the complete material breach where, they are allowed to sue and they are allowed to win that court case. So question 5 comes from an example used in one of the lessons. And the question is, does Sheila have a valid excuse not to pay her contract employees? So unfortunately, no, even though she's broke. According to East Capital v. Robinson, financial hardship, even running out of money, does not excuse non-performance from the contract. So courts reserve impossibility for extreme cases. So only things like natural disasters or death. So running out of money is kind of way different, way below the league of those. So it kind of makes sense why the courts stay away from just people going broke. So what Sheila should have done is made funding a condition in the contract. So as it stands now, she is still legally obligated to pay her employees. Question 6, define the word tort. So a tort is a civil wrong that's not a crime or like a breach of contract. It's like a wrong that is a harm or injury. And this is also can be either physical or economical. So it includes things like assault, defamation, and negligence. And if someone violates your rights or acts carelessly and causes damage, you may sue them in civil court for compensation under the law. So torts are kind of like the base of civil court almost, which, makes it easier to live life. not only being able to sue based on legal issues, but also, if someone like hurts you intentionally or accidentally, you can sue. And it kind of just protects our safety almost in a way. So it's nice to have other than things that are just, legal law. Question 7, what is fraud as an intentional tort, and why might civil fraud be used instead of criminal fraud? So fraud is an intentional misinterpretation of a material fact relied upon by someone to their injury. So civil fraud has a lower burden of proof and allows a victim to recover damages more easily. Prosecutors may choose tortious fraud when they want to make the victim whole without meeting the higher standard required in criminal court. So this often leads to quicker and more flexible remedies. So this is why people tend to go this route rather than, the criminal court route. Question 8, what is the right ratio for punitive to compensatory damages? So while there's no direct or fixed rule, the U.S. Supreme Court has suggested that punitive damages should not generally exceed a 4-to-1 ratio to compensatory damages. So I hope I'm saying that right, compensatory. So some states allow a higher, up to 16-to-1, but courts look at whether the punishment fits the harm. So in one textbook example, 145-to-1 ratio was struck down for being excessive.